Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Chelsea and I am 2 weeks postpartum. I gave birth to our first son 2 weeks ago today, and today I'm going to share his birth story. I had every intention of filming a live labor and delivery vlog while we were at the hospital, but once we got there and I filmed a couple clips and it just felt too intimate and personal to share, and we really wanted to kind of just experience it ourselves. Maybe I'll feel differently next baby, but for this one I just decided that this was the way we were going to do it. So I'll tell you now, if labor and delivery is gross to you, or if anatomical terms are weird and unsettling, I would just skip this video, because I'm going to talk about the correct anatomical terms and tell the story how it actually happened. So if that doesn't bother you and you love birth stories like I do, feel free to keep on watching. So here I am in all of my postpartum glory. I'm keeping it very real for y'all. My hair is not straightened or fixed, it is clean, so that's a good step in the right direction. And I don't have any makeup on. I've got a zit on my chin, but these are what our days really look like now with this little guy. He demands a lot of my time, and that's perfectly fine with me. So this is what it really looks like 2 weeks postpartum. I don't have the energy to pretty myself up for YouTube, and really I think YouTube could use more of the real stuff anyway. So let's get into his birth story. It was truly the most magical, life-changing day I have ever experienced. I'm sure most moms would say that, but I was not prepared for how different I would feel. I don't feel like the same person anymore, and I'm forever changed. So I've got some notes on my phone. We were at the hospital for just about 48 hours altogether, so a lot obviously happened in those 48 hours. First of all, I got my COVID test the Friday prior. We went into the hospital on a Tuesday night, and I got my COVID test the Friday prior to that. I did have an elective induction, so we knew when we were going in. I was able to get my house prepared. We had my husband's sister come and watch our dogs, and I felt very ready the day of going in. I am a huge proponent of elective induction now, and ours was 39 weeks 4 days, so we took him a little early, but as you'll see later, I'm glad we did. So I had the COVID test the Friday prior. It was 4 days prior to our induction, and that came back negative. Praise the Lord. So we were all good to go on Tuesday, February 2nd. I was around the house getting everything ready. I woke up feeling very energized and did not want to come home to any laundry or dishes or anything like that. So I spent my day cleaning the house and keeping myself busy, making sure we had all of the laundry done and put away. And so by the time Thomas got home about 3 o'clock, I felt very ready and prepared. I snuggled my dogs one good time before we left. And we left the house about 5 o'clock to go get Chick-fil-A on our way to the hospital, which I scarfed down. I thought I'd be nervous, but I was just hungry. Shocker, I'm always hungry. So we got to the hospital about 6 o'clock. We were in the room, IV in, all that good stuff by about 7:30. And that was pretty much the rest of our night. We did have Cervidil went in about 8:45, and when they checked me, I was 1.5 centimeter dilated, 50% effaced, and baby was still floating super high up. They called it a -3 station, but he was so far up they couldn't feel his head. So about midnight, maybe a little bit before, they actually brought in a bedside ultrasound. I guess they were a little concerned that maybe he had flipped and was breech, But luckily he was not. He was head down. He was just still really, really high. So that kind of not worried me, but I was like, oh my gosh, are we in for a super long induction experience? Is this gonna even work? If he's up so high now, what's gonna get him down? So I was a little concerned about that. But we just wrote it out, and I tried to relax and let the cervidil do its thing, and had a few contractions overnight, but they weren't anything super intense. It was just kind of like anytime I would get somewhat comfortable, I would have a contraction and it'd be kind of crampy, but not painful really, just kind of uncomfortable. So I got no sleep the night before he was born, which they kept telling me, you should try to sleep, you should try to sleep. And I was like, well, then you're gonna have to give me some Ambien or something, because this is not gonna happen for me without a little assistance. And it didn't. I got no sleep the night before, but somehow I was still energized and ready to go the next morning. They came in at about 7:30, and right after shift change, and my midwife came in, and she was a little surprised that the cervidil was still in and Pitocin had not been started. So they removed the cervidil at 7:45 in the morning, so I had it in for 11 hours, and they let me get up and shower and get myself in a good headspace, and then they started Pitocin at 8:30. When they checked me around 8:15 before they started Pitocin, I had no change whatsoever. We were still 1.5 centimeters dilated, about 50% effaced, and he was still floating. So I was like, oh my gosh, the cervidil did nothing. It did absolutely nothing to change any of my stats. And I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe he wasn't ready to come, and we're just forcing him out of here. But then once the Pitocin started, everything started moving pretty quickly, which I was grateful for. So like I said, Pitocin was started at 8:30 in the morning, and he was determined to be sunny side up. So his back was facing my back, which is not what they want. They want baby to be face down, facing your back basically. So he was just kind of floating around up there. But once the Pitocin started, I immediately started contracting about 3 minutes apart. They were more intense than the contractions I had been feeling, but I still wouldn't have described them as painful. My whole experience, I don't think I felt a single painful contraction until the very end. They came back in to check me about 3 hours later, about 11:45, and I was 3 centimeters, 70% effaced, and he had come down to a -1 station. So he was engaged, but not totally engaged yet. They were hoping he would be at more like a 0 station. So they started talking to me about going ahead and getting an epidural, and they wanted to break my water. So I said, absolutely, you can break my water, but I need the epidural first. And to this whole point, I had really not felt a ton of pain, but I had only progressed about 1.5 centimeters in, at this point, 3 hours on Pitocin. So I was excited to get my water broken because I had heard that that would speed things along, and it did. So they came back in about 15 minutes later and gave me my epidural. That was an experience, and I think part of why it was such an experience was because I was so nervous for the epidural. I'm okay with needles, especially after we had a bunch of tests for infertility before we ended up getting pregnant. So I've had a catheter through my cervix, and they pushed saline through my uterus while I was awake and unmedicated on the table. I did have a Xanax, but it didn't do much. So after all of that, needles don't really bother me anymore, but the thought of a catheter going into my spine and just kind of chilling there for the duration, I think that really freaked me out. So I was very nervous, but I had an amazing nurse anesthetist who was very patient and did an amazing job on my epidural. She was in and out in 10 minutes tops, and I cannot say enough times I had the perfect epidural. I couldn't feel contractions anymore. Actually, for a little while there, the only way I knew I was having a contraction was because some of my fluid would come out with each contraction. But I was still in control of my legs, and I could move my hips, and that proved to be really beneficial while we were delivering. So I wish I knew her name and could send her a thank you, because she was fantastic. But I did, I cried through most of the epidural. Like I said, I think it was just nerves, because it really didn't hurt all that bad. The only thing you really feel that's sharp is the needle to numb the area before they do the actual epidural catheter, and then the pressure of, you know, feeding that down into where it needed to be. But I was so nervous, and my husband was so great the whole time. And my grandfather is actually a retired nurse anesthetist, and he had told me to just curl up as tight as I could around a pillow and give them as much space as possible. So I do think that helped. So thank you to my pops for giving me some coaching on epidural posture. And once the epidural was placed, within minutes, I was, like I said, numb, but good. I had, you know, movement in my legs and couldn't feel the pain of a contraction, which to that point I really wasn't feeling a ton of pain. And then my midwife came in and broke my water. And when they broke my water, that was at about 12:15 in the afternoon. And the first thing she said was, "Wow, this is a lot more water than I was expecting." So that was when, I assume when they broke my water is when Bradley turned the correct way, because after that all the pressure in my back went away. And he, you know, seemed to descend pretty quickly after that. So just a ton of water was keeping him bouncing around in there. So then at about 2:50 in the evening, I'm basing this on my text messages with my friends, I started feeling really nauseated, and I asked for a throw up bag and some Zofran. I do not like to throw up. I've only thrown up once during pregnancy, and that was because I gagged myself with my toothbrush. So I really did not want to throw up. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, I know it hasn't even been 3 hours since they checked me, and I was just at a 3, but I also know that nausea is a sign of being in transition. So I wondered then if I could be around, you know, a 7 or, you know, 6 or 7 centimeters dilated. But I didn't think that that could be possible, because things had been moving pretty slowly up to that point. So I just kind of sat on it, and I started feeling a lot of pressure with each contraction. The first contraction, after I didn't have any more water coming with the contraction, I started feeling a lot of pressure, like I could feel him low in my pelvis. And I was having contractions about 2 minutes apart. So I didn't call the nurse, because I was thinking, this is insane. There's no way I'm as far dilated as I think I am. But then at about 3:30, so about 40 minutes after that, I started crying every time I would have a contraction. It didn't hurt, but there was tons of pressure in my perineum and in my butt. So it just kind of, it wasn't a sharp pain. It was more like I'm about to poop out a bowling ball pain, and almost like a constipated feeling. And my nurse happened to come in while I was having a contraction and crying. And she decided to check me herself, because she was like, this is a totally different state of mind than I've seen you in this entire time, and I think something must have changed here. So she checked me at 3:30, and I was almost 8 centimeters, 100% thinned out, and he was at 0 station, which is exactly where they wanted to see him. So they started prepping the room for delivery right then and there. And my midwife was actually delivering in the room across the hall from me right at that moment. So we decided to sit me straight upright like I was sitting on a throne to try to get him to come down and finish dilating the rest of the way. About 20 minutes later, they checked me again, and I was complete except for an anterior cervical lip. So everything else was gone. There was just a tiny little lip over his head that was keeping him from, you know, making me feel that urge to push. So they decided to wait for my midwife to finish that other delivery, and I sat straight up in that throne position for a little while longer to try to get him to come past that lip himself. While I was sitting up, they gave me some Jello and a popsicle and some ginger ale to get a little energy for pushing, and it worked. I felt amazing after that, and I was still feeling all of that pressure, but I was ready. I was so ready to meet our son. So then at about 5:10, so a little over an hour later, my midwife finished up the other delivery, and she came in to check me. I still had that cervical lip. I don't know if it was where he was positioned or if it was just that that's just how it was. That's just how my cervix decided to behave. But she decided to kind of hold it back and have me push to see if I could push him past the lip. And it worked. No problem. The only embarrassing part was on that very first push where I was pushing past that lip. She told me she wanted me to give it as big of a push as I could, and I farted directly in her face. Yeah. Luckily, Thomas kept it together, but I could see the light in his eyes. He wanted to laugh so bad. But I said, I'm so sorry. But my midwife and the nurse both told me, you need to push exactly like that every single time. That was awesome. So luckily that was the only gas that I passed in the delivery room. But so from there on, we started pushing, and it felt like no time to me whatsoever. I ended up pushing for about 40 minutes. Started at 5:10, and Bradley was born at 5:52. So I was on my back for the most part, but about halfway through, my midwife asked me to rotate my hips and try to turn onto my side a little bit. Bradley's heart rate, his baseline heart rate the entire labor experience had been a little low. So it started dipping a little bit once he was really down in the birth canal. And it was time to get him out. So I was luckily, like I said, I was able to control my hips and my legs a little bit, and it was easier to get into a good position to push. And he recovered, and we turned to the other side and pushed a little bit, and ultimately on my back was where I was most effective. I was able to tell them when I thought it was time to push because I could feel my contractions a little bit, and I think that was what made it so effective. I will say my epidural failed right at the end, right as he crowned. I suddenly could feel everything that was happening. He was a little tiny bit stuck. His head was about 2 inches of his head was out. And I had what they called a very tight vaginal band around the rest of his head. So they had me wait through 2 contractions to let it stretch on its own. In those 2 contractions, it felt like time had stopped. That's the only part of my labor and delivery experience that I would consider painful in the least. That was the most intense 2 or 3 minutes of my life. My husband said that I sounded demonic. Of course, I don't remember any of it really. I remember that it hurt, but I don't remember the sensation of it hurting, which I'm grateful for. But I laid my head back and I opened my eyes, and there was a fluorescent light above me that was not on. And you know how they have the glass covers on them? Well, because it wasn't on, it was kind of a mirror. And I saw what was happening, and I think that scared me a little bit, but it was all worth it in the end. I had a great support staff, and as soon as it released a little bit, they had me push again, and his head came right out, and they wiggled his shoulders out, and then his body, to me, it felt like jello after how hard his head was just sitting right there for so long. His body just kind of flew out after his head, and that was the most relief I've ever felt in my entire life. So he was born 5:52 p.m., 7 pounds even, and he had such a long cone on the back of his head that the hospital called him 20 inches. 2 days later, the pediatrician said, nope, he's more like 19. So by my opinion is that he was 7 pounds, 19 inches long. Hospital record and his birth certificate will say otherwise. But I will say that our delivery experience was a dream. I could not have asked for a better delivery. I think part of what made the delivery so incredible was my team that was around me. I was, because of COVID, my only option for support was my husband, but that's the way we would have done it regardless. It would have just been me and him, and then our medical team. But I'll try to say this without being emotional. At the time of delivery, it was me, Thomas, and then I was literally surrounded by women. And it was incredible. I had an amazing midwife who was there coaching me the whole way. My main labor nurse, her name was Ellen. I wish I knew her last name so that I could share how incredible she was. She was there with me the whole time. She stayed by my bedside for an hour while we waited for delivery time because she didn't want us to feel alone. She brought some charting into my room and just stayed there with us. She was fantastic. And then I was surrounded by 2 other labor and delivery nurses and a baby nurse who also was a woman. The only man in the room other than my husband was the other baby nurse, who stayed over by the baby warmer and was very respectful the entire time. But from my vision and in my peripherals, it was just me, my husband, and this amazing team of women who helped me and encouraged me. I felt so supported through the whole delivery experience, even when things got a tiny bit scary, when his heart rate dropped, and then when things got very intense for me. My main nurse, Ellen, got right in my face and said, you know, we're just gonna wait through these next 2 contractions. We're gonna let you stretch around your baby, and then he'll be here. I need you to be patient. I need you to breathe through it. She was so calming. She took the phone from Thomas right after Bradley was born so that we could have pictures. She took an incredible video of Bradley's, literally his first seconds on my chest, and to have my own reaction to my baby being born on video, even though I wasn't filming a labor and delivery vlog, is something that I will cherish forever. My midwife was incredible. She made me wait through those hard couple of minutes, but in doing so, she prevented me from having any tearing at all. I had 3 vaginal lacerations in 3 different corners of my vagina and perineum. So I had 3 separate stitches, but not a single tear. I'm already totally healed from that. And it was incredible. I never felt more surrounded and supported and loved than I did in those moments. My husband was incredible. He was right there the whole time. He was holding a leg and encouraging me and telling me how great of a job I was doing, making sure I had my water right there. It was magical. And I've always wondered how women say, oh, I can't wait to do that again, but I can't wait to do that again. We plan to have one more baby, Lord willing, and I can't wait to experience that again. It is truly a life-changing moment. So he was born, everything was fantastic. We had already decided that Thomas didn't want to cut the cord. He didn't want to be squeamish and, you know, kind of mess up his first moments as a parent with, you know, being squeamish, I guess. And that was fine with me. If he didn't want to cut it, that was fine. In the moment they asked if I wanted to cut it, I was not in the right headspace to cut the cord, so my midwife cut it. And my placenta came pretty quickly after that. The first thing she said when she saw the placenta was, oh my goodness, we have quite a small placenta here. It was about 2/3 the size that it should have been, and he had a marginal cord insertion. A normal cord insertion is, if you picture that the placenta is like a donut, the cord should go in where the donut hole would be. And Bradley's cord was off to the side, kind of where, like on a uppercase Q, where the little line through the bottom is. That's kind of how his cord was. So it was pretty incredible that he was so healthy, even with such a small placenta and a poor cord insertion. He came out tiny, much tinier than we anticipated. If you'll recall, Thomas was 12 pounds at birth and I was 9 pounds 2 ounces. So we expected a much larger baby than a 7-pound baby, but he is perfectly healthy. He is thriving, and we are so, so grateful. So that's our birth story. He came in a flash once we got him out of his little swimming pool, and he's been a dream ever since. We are finally getting our days and nights in the right order. He is sleeping right now, but he is now sleeping about 3.5–4 hours through the night. Breastfeeding has not worked out for us, nursing anyway, so I'm pumping breast milk and feeding him in a bottle. We are supplementing with formula, but he is growing and he is thriving. I will do another separate video about that, on our journey through feeding with him. And I have lots of newborn must-haves and don't waste your money on ideas for y'all, so I will have a video on that coming soon as well. Thank you so much for watching. We are so excited to have this little boy on the outside and experience life with him, and I am excited to join the many YouTube moms that I look up to and go to for advice. And hopefully I will be able to help someone else in the near future with mom stuff. But for now, I'm gonna go enjoy snuggling this one. He will wake up here shortly needing some food, so I'm gonna go prepare for that. But I hope you're all having a fantastic day. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing and hitting the thumbs up on this video. It would help me out so much. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.